Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So I did a portion of this yesterday. To be honest, I kind of botched it, if I'm being honest. So I want to redo it. I hated that particular video. I'm leaving it up, but I hated the video. I'm going to be very specific when I do this one. So this dividing up the topics somehow screws it up. Red Scare 2.0. I want to talk about Red Scare 2.0. To talk about Red Scare 2.0, I need to talk about Red Scare 1.0. So the United States gets into a Cold War with the Soviet Union. The United States has its monikers of freedom, justice, equality, as Uncle Sam holding on to the American eagle as it, sails its ship by Lady Liberty. Freedom and justice. Freedom and justice. We believe in democracy. That's what we believe in. The Soviet Union goes with a different idea of we want fairness. We want workers to have control of production. We want fairness. This is the Marxian vision. Now, in order to achieve this Marxian vision, Stalin murdered tens of millions of people to accomplish what he needed to accomplish. That being said, the Soviet Union pulled itself from one war after the next, after which in each war it lost millions and millions of people, to becoming the number 2 power in the world. 2 systems. This kind of communistic system, which I would argue is state capitalism, but communistic system, versus the democracy, the capitalistic system. Now, at the bare bones, you can understand the issue, right? One system says we want to be able to sell people stuff and buy stuff and all this other stuff. The other system says we want fairness and we want to have control of the means of production, that type of stuff. Now, here's the catch. Both countries were lying. Both of those things that they were putting out, saying freedom, justice, equality, and all this other stuff, and the Soviet Union's idea of this kind of socialistic place, both of those things were lies. The Soviet Union was state capitalism. It just had the state taking control of everything, not to mention completely undemocratic. The capitalistic system wasn't freedom and justice any more than, not to mention, this is screaming freedom and justice at a time where part of the population, like 10-12% of the population, was second-class citizens. They were lies. The United States didn't go into countries and wars purely for this idea of democracy. We put in dictators and strong men in one country after the next. We toppled one democracy or one secular government after the next to achieve our ends. The Soviet Union also do this thing of chasing countries. The United States went with this idea that if one country falls, then there will be a quote-unquote domino effect. Had nothing to do with science. This has everything to do with ideology. Now, because of that, though, millions of people were murdered. Millions of people were put into these really shitty situations in pursuit of this idea of fighting a Cold War. You had 2 nuclear power nations that essentially had proxy wars across the globe as if they were moving chess pieces. And if the pieces they were moving had no feelings, had no this idea of pain and hurt and anguish, this idea of these pieces that they were moving around the globe as if those things weren't somehow real. Because they were real. There were real people that were being affected by the decisions that these guys were making. Masters of the universe. There was another effect of the Cold War. In the United States, the effect of the Cold War had this chilling effect on politics. Meaning the range of debate of politics. You could have Democrats. You could have Republicans. If you go too far to the left, you might be a communist. You better shut up with that communist talk. Lord knows, don't let us call you a socialist. We will put you in prison. You have this Red Scare, the Red Menace, the McCarthy hearings, all this other insane stuff fighting this idea of a Cold War. And like I said, it had a chilling effect on politics. It had a chilling effect on politics. Meaning, before all of the Red Scare and everything else, believe it or not, you actually had other parties in the United States. You had people to the left of the Democratic Party that were on their heels, be it Unionists or Socialists. After the war, during the Cold War, not so much. Not so much. You sealed the range of debate. The definitive left, at that point, became the Democratic Party. Now, move forward in time. 2012, 2014, 2015, I'm sorry. A socialist runs in the Democratic primary, and that socialist was cheated in order for the Democratic candidate to exceed to exceed to eventually lose a reality show hosting a general election. But we need to be very clear, that's not insignificant. Like, anybody that lived through the Cold War, no, I didn't live through the Cold War, but I've read and studied enough about it. Anybody that's lived through the Cold War will understand that that's a major thing. This guy, unbridled socialist, running in this country. And part of the reason this guy had the leverage to run in this way was because capitalism and the Democratic Party dropped the ball. Now, it's one thing if you're going to be further to the left, or you had elements of your party that were further to the left. But again, you've sealed off the range of debate, Democrat and Republican. And the Democratic Party moved to the right, leaving this massive space that was completely unfulfilled, that was supposed to be filled by the Democratic Party. You had two corporate parties, or two conservative parties at this point, Coke and Pepsi. One is a little sweeter. Now, the Democratic Party, the trick was to say, look, we're least worse. Those guys are batshit crazy. We're least worse. We're going to do the corporate stuff. Don't get me wrong. We're going to be obsequious to Wall Street. We're going to murder and plunder just as much as the Republicans are. But we're going to be not as bad towards workers. We're still going to give the tax cuts, but it's going to be not as bad of a tax cut. We're going to be a little bit less. Both parties, for the most part, agree on the way things are. One party just believes in a little bit more moderation to those things. Now, if you fundamentally believe that there's a problem with the system itself, neither of these two parties address your concerns. Meaning the majority of the population doesn't get their concerns addressed by the party apparatus itself. Party doesn't care. From the Democratic Party standpoint, we're least worse. Logically, you should vote for the person who's least worse, right? Right? It's logic. It's just logic. It's like your faculties, it's like your consciousness in that sense, that your mental processes itself looks at it and says, well, yeah, 4 is greater than 3. This is least worse. I'm going with the one that's least worse. You can even come away with this thinking that because there are only two parties, that those two parties, the left party, Democratic Party, is the definitive left. This is what the left is in the United States. This is the range of debate in the United States, and this is what the left is. But you had a socialist running in the primaries. Now, after this socialist exceeds to this level of preeminence, meaning all of these people are aware of who Bernie Sanders is, the Democratic Party itself is being given litmus tests and being beat up, saying you are not the definitive left, you are not representing what you're supposed to represent, and we're going to pummel you and beat you until you are. That space only opened up because the socialists ran in the primary itself, pushing the party to the left and showing the party up. He's standing there like a beacon of what they were and what they are not. It's almost as if by virtue of what he is, their failings are apparent to the world. They're complete failings. Not to mention, they've lost all legitimacy from this idea of we're the adults in the room that can't win a goddamn election. The adults in the room, my ass. The point that I'm getting at is that the Russian scare nonsense, Donald Trump worked with the Russians. Donald Trump worked with the Russians. If you're a progressive and you were in DAPL, you might have been being manipulated by the Russians. If you were supporting Bernie Sanders, you may be manipulated by the Russians. If you're in Black Lives Matter, you might be manipulated by the Russians. Russians are instigating Facebook ads. There's Facebook ads that Russians are putting out that's sowing dissension in the United States. Twitter is a Russian agent showing dissension in the United States. These $150,000 ads toppled Hillary Clinton's $1 billion bribe fest, or whatever you want to call it. Russians are on the march. They're at our shores. They're trying to topple us. They're trying to take us down. You know, right now they're having hearings. A bunch of idiots are having hearings, browbeating Facebook and Twitter for engaging in capitalistic, their normal capitalistic thing. You're giving me cash. I'm doing you a service. I'm going to say thank you for the cash. As if Facebook and Twitter in some way swayed the election. This has nothing to do with science. This has nothing to do with research. This has everything to do with ideology and politics. If you're going to use the Russian thing to try to attack progressives, which is the argument they're making. In the same way the Russian thing back in the 50s had this chilling effect on this kind of progressive fervor, this idea of things going to the left of what the Democratic Party is. I'm arguing that there's a potential that they're trying to do the exact same thing now, whether intentional or not. I suspect it's probably intentional. It's politics. Now, there's a slight difference. Back then, when the government said something, people believed it. Right now, the government really has no legitimacy whatsoever, being the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. You have a faction of the country that will believe the things that will come out of their mouths. But for the most part, a larger part of the country, more and more, are believing less of what they say. Now, so the Red Scare doesn't necessarily have an impact. I'm just kind of making this point that strategically, that's the point. Like, part of this is we want to trap Donald Trump. We want to beat up Donald Trump. We want to tie up the administration itself. But part of this is that the Democratic Party understands that it's being assaulted. It is a civil war. Both parties, Republican Party also. But they are completely aware. They're very prescient. Oh my God, these people are attacking Kamala Harris, and she's such a perfectly nice woman. And these people are going after Cory Booker. They mauled Cory Booker. Did you hear that? They mauled Cory Booker when he went out against Bernie Sanders' Medicare thing. Oh my God, these progressives are animals. They're coming to get us. They're coming to get us. Yeah, we're coming to get you. That's the point. We're coming to get you. By hook or by crook. Meaning either we just don't vote for you and you consistently lose until your party implodes, or you bend to our will. In both cases, from a strategic standpoint, you lose. Now, if they understand that people are polling data and everything else, and all of these people are asking questions about why can't the Democratic Party win? Why can't they win anything? They lost to reality show hosts. These Republicans are batshit crazy, and yet they're still winning elections. Democrats can't win to save their life. 50% of the population doesn't vote, and the Democratic Party is continually losing to Republicans. Meaning, when they're talking about this gerrymandering and everything else, are they including the 50% of the population that don't vote? Are they? Are they? Does their politics factor that into play? And what I'm getting at is, those people don't vote for a reason. Those people don't vote for a reason. I imagine those people might have been Democrats at one point, and you left them when you moved to the right. Red Scare 2.0, part of it is to try to tamp down on this idea of progressives, to get this meat out into the ether of, hey, progressives were being manipulated by Russia. Black Lives Matter was being manipulated by Russia. No Dapple was being manipulated by Russia. The revolutionaries, the malcontents, the people who were completely unhappy with the way things are, those people were being manipulated by Russia. Those people were being manipulated by Russia. There's no reality. Those people are being manipulated by Russia. The point is to stem the tide. They understand it's a civil war. These are shots fired in that civil war. It needs to be dispelled. It needs to be obliterated. It needs to be destroyed. It needs to not be given any quarter or anything else. If you are a progressive, whatever those groups are, being Black Lives Matter, No Dapple, whatever the revolutionaries are, the socialists, the anarchists, the people who are further to the left than the Democratic Party, the independents, some conservatives, the Trumpers. I don't care about your politics, or at the very least, I don't care about your party stuff. I think both of these parties are problematic. I think this Red Scare 2.0 is A, to tarnish Trump, that's one, but B, to settle progressives, to put them in a corner saying, hey, you're probably being manipulated by Russia. Don't let that happen. Don't let that work. It worked once in the 50s. This is not the 50s. This is not the 50s. If they feel that they're under assault, good, they should. If they want to do this thing of an olive branch, fuck it, I don't want it. You're not the adults in the room. All level of legitimacy that you guys had with this idea of Bill Clinton and everything else evaporated when you couldn't win a goddamn election. And the point of politics is to win. You've lost your legitimacy. Go away. The Red Scare thing is not going to work. Go away. Go away. You either lose consistently in perpetuity, or you change. And until progressives get to the point where they're taking that particular position, nothing changes. If you're always going to be cowed in this thing of I'm least worse. I'm least worse. These people like Sam Cedar and all these other people who think that because the Republicans are so batshit crazy that you should always give Democrats a pass and just always vote the Democrat, you never get anything done. That's not any strategical place to be. That's you being complicit in whatever the hell the Democratic Party does and being on your show bitching about it. The position, the only position that works is no. It's no. It's not flashy. It's not elegant. It's not this highfalutin intellectual thing. There is a strategy to it. But if you're continuously complicit, you would always get what you've always gotten. Because ultimately they know these guys are batshit crazy, so we can always agree that these people are going to vote for us. I'm saying your position needs to be, we're not. You need to be loud about it. People need to know. Each and every person who you come across as a Democrat who's saying something about voting for Democrat, you need to make your point clear that no, they're not getting my goddamn vote. You're not getting my vote until you represent my interests. Period. I don't care who's on the other side. You're my responsibility in a sense. Meaning if you're going to be the left-leaning party and you want me to vote for the left-leaning party, then the left-leaning party needs to actually be left-leaning. You need to be left-leaning. Represent your goddamn interests. The people who you actually want to vote for you, you should represent those interests. I understand you have this issue of cash, which is kind of the problem. That's kind of the problem. You want to obfuscate with Russia because you don't want to deal with the issues in the party itself. This Russia stuff is nonsense. I don't doubt that Trump has business dealings with Russia. That's probably true. And I still make the point that firing Comey was a mistake because Mueller seems to have a different tenor, and the berth that they gave him is wide. They allowed him this wide berth. In one of my other videos, I'm going to show. I've read that out before. This thing of the breadth of the investigation. They gave him a wide latitude in that investigation, meaning, yes, they can go into Trump's business dealings. Mind you, and these investigations go for years. So, I think that was a mistake. But whether or not there's Trump colluded with Russia, I think that's nonsense. Personally, I think it's nonsense. It wasn't a hack. It was a leak. But again, the whole point of this has nothing to do with reality. The whole point of this is everything to do with attack Trump and attack progressives. Red Scare 2.0. Red Scare 1.0 was able to put lefties in a corner because those lefties were scared of being called communists. Red Scare 2.0 is different. There's the internet. There's additional news sources. And these guys have lost their legitimacy. I will leave it at that. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, and subscribe. And of course, you can always support the Patreon. Thanks guys.